We live? And we're live. There's always more of a delay than I think. Well, anyways, hello, everybody. I'm super excited to be here today with Shelia Marcelo. And I am Allie Wyatt. I am co-founder and CEO of Female Founder Collective and the 10th House. The 10th House is our private membership community for people to find each other by stage, by industry, by geography, to share resources, to help each other level up, and where we have amazing exclusive programming and opportunities to connect with incredible experts like Sheila herself. But without further ado, I'm very excited to introduce her. She is the co-founder and CEO of Proof of Learn, a Web3 learning platform with a mission to unlock accessible, high-quality education across the world. And prior to Proof of Learn, Sheila was a venture partner at New Enterprise Associates, or NEA. In 2006, before joining NEA, she founded a very well-known company that I've used throughout my career very much, Care.com, where she was chairwoman and CEO until early 2020. Under her leadership, Care.com experienced over 100% year-over-year growth, went public in early 2014, and was sold to IAC in early 2020. And today, Care.com is the world's largest online destination for finding and managing family care, serving more than 35 million people across 20 countries, which is just incredible. I can't imagine having that kind of broad societal impact in building a business. So let's talk a little bit about you, though, and I want to hear more about specifically that journey to building Care.com. You're one of the few women to ever lead a company through an IPO, which must have been a really incredible journey. But I would love to hear what the story was in starting Care.com.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Allie, and hello to all the community listening in. So founded it in 2006, and the real inspiration for that was that I got pregnant between my sophomore and junior year in college. And my son Ryan, who is now 30 years old, I'm dating myself, and that's okay. But I don't wish it upon anybody. But that pregnancy, with my parents being in the Philippines and my husband's parents deceased, we didn't really have a lot of care options. And we were ambitious. We wanted to graduate college. We wanted to pursue, careers, and then also go on to grad school. And so it was very challenging looking for care as we were raising Ryan. And then fast forward, when I was at a company, it was actually an education company, you'll see it full round, called You Promise, helps families save money for college. I was working a lot of hours, and I had a second child, Adam, and I begged my parents to come from the Philippines to care for him. And as my father was walking up the stairs, ended up getting a heart attack. Yeah. And so in the care space, we call this sandwich between childcare and senior care at the young age of 29 years old. And I wasn't prepared for that. And I think as I was looking for Care Alley, I was using the Yellow Pages, but I was working at a technology company because at the time the only things available were 8.5 by 11 flyers at church that had those little tags or ears at you, or at the YMCA that had phone numbers of babysitters that were flyers. There were Yellow Pages, again, that were becoming defunct. Craigslist. There weren't a lot of real options. And as I was looking for care, I realized, wait, I have a tech background. Why don't I use that experience and skills to start something? Because I'm going through this difficult situation of looking for care. And then found that as I peeled the onion, millions, if not billions of families were going through it. And I've always been drawn to do social impact platforms. And so for me, it just made sense to apply my skills and my education. I did my JD MBA at Harvard, and just felt like the combination of law, business, and understanding of technology I could bring to bear to solve a social problem in the world.
And how did you end up finding the funding or the bandwidth, frankly, right? So now you have 2 children, you're putting yourself through school, and you work at a full-time company. How did you find the resources to ultimately start Care.com?
I don't know that I knew right away that I was ready to be an entrepreneur. And it was always, the quick story is, it was always mentors and sponsors in my life. I had gotten pregnant in my JD MBA program. And so my professor, Linda Applegate, said, listen, your JD might qualify enough for a PhD. Did you want to teach at Harvard Business School and help me with a class that you did well on called Building Information Age Businesses and Women Building Business? Thankfully, I don't think they teach women building business anymore at Harvard Business School because women should be building businesses anyway. It shouldn't be a lesson to do that. But building information age businesses, I'm also dating myself. That's back then what we called in the 90s, the internet. And I started teaching how to write internet business plans. And here I was, and I have never been an operator in the internet. So I jumped in and joined You Promise. And then You Promise was sort of my general management tour of duty. I did that for 5 years. I learned a lot. I got catapulted into the management team at a young age and had great mentors. And it was really my mentors who said, you know what, you're capable of doing more. You're a great entrepreneur. I wanted to start a company. Wasn't ready yet to do it. We had just had a family crisis, a death in the family. And so I joined another company called The Ladders. A very dear friend of mine from business school was a CEO. I helped scale that. And then when I left The Ladders for personal reasons, because I didn't want to move my family to New York City, my son had gotten into a school in the Boston area in private school, and I wanted to be nearby. I didn't want to trade that personal decision. I then jumped in and joined a venture capital firm called Matrix Partners. Mm-hmm. And that's where I learned the part of finance I hadn't done in my previous experiences. And I wrote the business plan for CARE. And that's where I got seed funded, joined the company in a role called an entrepreneur in residence. I didn't even know what that was, and help me develop the plan, write the business plan, and then get funded from there. So in each stage that I kind of described, whether it was Linda Applegate, whether it was mentors who pushed me when I was at The Ladders, who said, you're ready to start your own thing and be your own CEO. And that's when I joined Matrix. And it was Matrix and the venture firm who said, you know what, we could hire you in and be one of our executives at one of our portfolio companies, but we really think this business plan that you wrote at care.com, I haven't even parked it. I wasn't sure I wanted to do it. They said, we really want to fund it. We really think you should do it. So in each stage, Allie, I always questioned myself whether I was really ready. And I had people push me and say, you're really ready to do your next thing. And as women, diverse candidates, I just think that sometimes we need that push because we didn't grow up with all that support around us and that accessibility to opportunity. And lacking role models, that we needed the Atta-girl people in our lives to sponsor us and pull us along.
I love that. I'm gonna coin that. Have Atta-girls. You gotta the first things you have to do. I was gonna ask about that because I thought it was so interesting, Sheila, in one of the interviews that I'd seen with you. You had talked about that lack of confidence, and somebody definitely. Again, one of the few women that have ever navigated a company, especially from founding stage through to an IPO. And I'm sure that was a very challenging feat, especially because that wasn't today, right? Where you're seeing a little bit more of that. Can you talk about, those Atta-girls, right? Who are the people, or what are the things that you fell back on in order to engage your confidence and feel more like you could tackle what was a really difficult situation, even if it wasn't funding, right? Like you sort of had the dream scenario that you had backers that wanted you, that pushed you to go do this. Whereas so many women are out there fighting for funding and maybe not able to get it. But I think a lot of it ends up being around confidence. So I'd love to hear your advice on that.
Absolutely. I think, Allie, in each stage, and I still feel it, even though I've exited CARE and it's been a successful global company, in each stage, there's always this imposter syndrome as women. And, I'm stereotyping, but I think it's common where we feel this sense that something is lacking. And whenever you go through this period that something is lacking in a skill or an experience or a role, we tend to quickly, conclude that we're not ready for something. And people around us look at us and say, you seem pretty buttoned up and prepared, and I think you could be ready for that. And sometimes we need other people telling us that and holding up a mirror. And I know Sheryl Sandberg and others have quoted that men, on the other hand, the data has shown that more often than not, even though they may be lacking the skills, they jump in anyway with
Yeah.
all full four, 2 feet in and just like, I'm ready for this role. And for me, back to your question around who in my life has done that for me, it's people who hold up the mirror both ways. It's those that, Joni Nevins, who was a CFO at UPromise, Dave Andre, the CTO at UPromise as well. They pulled me aside because I had a style after graduating. And I was very intense because I didn't sleep very much, and deadlines needed to be met. And so I had a style that says, okay, well, why didn't you hit the deadline? And I was just tough to work for because my bar was super high. And after they took me out to lunch, and they basically said, you're very talented, but you're getting in your own way.
Mm.
And I started to realize I needed coaching at 29. I was really young. And out
Yeah.
of that coaching, I did some meditation and some soul searching. And I found that I needed to be intense in outcomes. I didn't need to change my style on outcomes, but be chill with people and be more understanding and kind and respectful. And so adjusted my style. And so at moments where we lack confidence or we need to adjust our skill set, like I had to in my leadership style, we turn to the people who are honest and direct and that can guide us in our lives and are in our tribe. And I've always, after that gift that they gave me, and it really is a gift, I've decided after that how do I pay it forward to others and who I mentor? How can I be as authentic as I can to help guide them into their future? Because it's not easy. Especially, I'm an immigrant. I was not born and raised in this country. I didn't have the same access and opportunity where I could just call and pick up the phone and call my parents and say, hey, I'm going through this difficult experience. What do I do in this situation? I think many of us don't have that. Or kids whose parents are nurses or, working at the grocery aisle, and yet they're super talented and they're doing well and they got scholarships to go to school. They don't know who to call
Yeah.
for advice. And so in those moments, we all have it. We have to lean on each other. And if you're listening in, if you've gotten that gift in your life, you now have a role to figure out, well, how do you pay it forward to somebody else around guiding people? Because the reality is we're all human. There's insecurities throughout. I still have insecurities. Doesn't matter what success brings. It's a sense of always challenging ourselves. And the other thing I touched on, Allie, is meditating. It's a gift I've given myself in moments where I'm stressed, when I have a lot going on. I just go into my own sponsorship, I call it,
Wow.
and talking to, guiding myself to get rid of those voices that aren't productive, that create insecurity, that eats into my confidence. And that journey of whether it's the people in our lives that hold up the mirror or the meditation that I do is this journey of authenticity. I actually think the more authentic you are in your pursuit, the more confident and bolder you are. And the only way to go through that is to admit your vulnerabilities and really figure out the psyche through those vulnerabilities, so that you can gain that inner confidence that then shines to other people when you're raising money or doing other things.
I love that. And then people are attracted to you. Like you
I
mentioned.
think I think so, because there's a sense of trust, that there is a sense that this person can have a bad hair day and just still be human, be understanding, and be kind. I think that's important in leadership.
I love that. And I think that more and more people are adopting that philosophy, which I think historically has not necessarily been hand in hand with leadership and frankly should be. I want to talk about motherhood and
Mm,
entrepreneurship because,
sure.
as you said, part of your founding journey was the fact that you became a mother, right? And that
Mm,
changed things for you and opened your eyes to a really challenging notion for women. And a lot of our
mm,
founders are mothers, and that's that you have to have care. So how did you find that balance too, even if you
mhm,
did find those care partners that became part of your team?
mhm.
How did you, in your head as an executive of a major company that became a public company, determine, how to maintain a sense of homogeny at home and at work.
I love how you say in your head, because that was so much part of it in your question, that I needed to let go of guilt. I needed to feel
Yeah.
comfortable outsourcing for help, thuscare.com, that it was okay, that my definition of being a good mother didn't mean that I had to be there 24/7 or give up my dreams and my career. Um, so I prioritized that sort of meditation around guilt management. The second is leaning on my partner, and my husband was okay.
Yeah.
Um, it's so funny that I think sometimes we can complain that our partner doesn't do enough, but I also think that we have to work on our psyche of control. People are willing to help, but they want to do it their way, and so we need to feel comfortable that that's okay. Like, not only asking for help, but their help means their method of doing things.
Yeah.
And so raising our children, instead of arguing, I remember my husband would say, I would say, well, maybe teach homework this way, and I don't have time. And he's like, well, either I'm teaching them homework my way, or you're going to figure out how to like free up your time to teach homework. So it's got to, there's a give there that I think needs to happen, and lean on your partners overall. And then the third is, I think it's just, again, this authenticity and this friendship that I have with my children. Both are really close. One's 30 and one's 22. The honesty that I have of a lot of travel that I do sometimes. And then even now when I'm stressed or I'm handling things, my life's very integrated. They kind of know what I'm going through, the journey that we're in. I mean, tell a quick story. A few years after, going public. Let me back up. When we went public, let me tell the story first. A few years before going public, my son graduated from high school, and then he basically was at the refrigerator, and I was getting a glass of milk, and I was just asking him a very casual question after graduation. I said, Ryan, how was mom? Did you think mom was, how was mom during, your upbringing? Was I there enough for you? Right. And it was my own guilt that I was even asking the question,
Big
right?
question.
Yes, a big question. And I mean, he was grown up and he had graduated and all that. And his answer was, no, I wish you were around more. And in my mind, I was like, okay, I didn't buy the cookie. I mean, I didn't bake all the cookies and the brownies and all that. I bought them. They were really delicious. But
The store-bought ones were much
yeah,
better anyways.
yeah. And I don't know that I was at every game,
Yeah.
And so that was tough. But then fast forward years later, when I took the company public, and at that time he was, I think, a sophomore or freshman in college, a few years later. And then he actually, at the final dinner, after going public, and we celebrated with accountants and investment bankers, and it was our families, and it was sort of the IPO post dinner, and it was open microphone. And I thought our team would take it, professionals would take it, kind of say thank you to each other. I was really tired.
Yeah.
Because it's a very emotional experience. So he takes the microphone. My son stands up, takes the microphone. I said, "Oh no!" And he basically said,
Like, is he going to talk about this
"Yeah,
thing?
I know." He said, "Mom, I want to relay a story. Do you remember that time after graduation at the fridge, you asked me this question
Yeah.
about whether you were around enough?" And he said, I always get really emotional even telling the story
I'm
still. He
getting
says,
emotional, I can tell.
yeah. And he basically said, I want you to know, I said no, but the answer was a wrong answer. And I should have said yes, because I actually think now that I realize what you have done, that I have observed that impact millions of lives, was so much more important than those baked cookies and brownies and being at every game. But what you sacrifice for me to be there for millions of others means a lot. So
No.
I say that to say that, as I know, it gets me super emotional each time, that as moms, if you're listening in, that, and I've had friends who are empty nesters now,
Yeah.
relay how much your children thank you, to see how hard you work, not only what you do for them, but what you do for yourself,
Yeah.
and what you do for others.
Yeah.
That they realize it as they grow up. They may not feel that way, because it's natural for children to want all your attention and to complain and say, well, why isn't it all about me?
Yeah.
And I actually think it raises children that are much more attuned to others' needs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's sort of a way to think about it. And my proof point is anecdotal. It's my own children who've affirmed that for me. That I think we made it work in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. But that's so beautiful. And it's a struggle for every mom, right? It's like, what are the right trade-offs and what are the right priorities and decisions to make? And in the time, like you said, it might not feel like the right one for you or for your kid. But I think,
Right.
like you said, the long run,
That's
I
right.
think it builds so much character for them and it shows them what kind of values um, that they can infuse into the future, which is huge. So thank you for that. It was such a beautiful story. Literally
Oh,
the most beautiful stories that I've heard, and I've definitely never
oh.
tried on one of these things. But I wanna turn to your present because again,
Sure.
you had taken a sabbatical. Now you are back. You're building another business, which
Yes.
extraordinary. You've already had, the career of dreams for most, but you are a change maker. And so I wanted to talk about Web3 because you are building a company on the blockchain and that really supports building out this whole ecosystem. So
Yeah.
we'd love for you to talk about proof of learn
Sure.
and the why and that
Yeah.
kind of story.
Yeah, well, you touched on it. After selling care.com, February 2020, my husband and I, with the pandemic, it was like 2 weeks before the pandemic that we closed the deal. I didn't have a crystal ball. Everyone's like, oh my God, you timed it so well. And I was like, we were going to travel the world and kind of enjoy the fruits of 14 years of hard work and just rest. Because my body was exhausted and needed to do a lot of just, downtime. Instead, we had downtime at home. And so we started investing in crypto. And we always intended, sorry about that, we always intended to actually go into crypto. It was always we had gone to Davos in the World Economic Forum in 2015 and heard Reid Hoffman and Jim Breyer talk about how crypto was going to be super massive. So we were excited about that. So we basically went and decided to just invest for a year, learned about L1s and blockchain. It was sort of like going back to school, talk about proof of learned in education. And then fast forward, Tony Florence at NEA, good friend of mine, basically who was in our C round, offered to invest. We've got some sound happening, but to invest overall, to ask me to be a venture partner at NEA. So I basically agreed to do that. And then we started investing also professionally in crypto companies. I felt like it was a privilege to work with my colleagues. And then I was doing due diligence on a company called Axie Infinity and YGG. YGG is called Yield Guild Games, giving scholarship to a play to earn model on Axie Infinity. And I watched this documentary. And there was a grandmother in the rural area of the Philippines, Lola Vergi, and in Cabanatuan, Nueva Ecija, Philippines. And I was born and raised there, so caught my attention, Allie. And she had downloaded a crypto wallet, purchased Ethereum, purchased non-fungible tokens. It was playing this play to earn game and making more income than the average wage in the rural area. And I was like, oh my goodness, the metaverse and Web3 is ready. This isn't just an infrastructure play. This is real. Consumers are engaging with it. How do I take my consumer background on the internet, my passion for social impact, and what can I do? At first, I thought it would just be more investing. But then at NFT New York, I brainstormed with the YGG founders and we came up with Learn to Earn. And we were so excited about it that the first thing I uttered is, Gabby Dizon, who runs YGG, said, well, who's going to run it? And Allie, I wasn't intending to run anything soon. And I just said and my husband was looking at me because he was part of the brainstorm. And I said, oh, I'm ready. I'm like going to jump back in again. And I was so excited. And I said, but I need someone who's coding in crypto, wants to be my partner in crime. And so Kevin Yang, Gabby Dizon introduced us, and he happened to be in NFT New York. And so we're off and running. So Proof of Learn, we want to be the leading educational platform in blockchain and the metaverse. Our very first project, you can see it up on screen, is MetaCrafters. And our goal is to onboard the next million Web3 developers. So we want to take Web2 developers and train them to be Web3 developers with a new model called Learn to Earn, where they can literally learn to code, and we would pay them additional income to learn. So it's a modern academy. We want to learn. So eventually we're developing products for the alpha generation, because I do think education is going to continue to be disruptive and innovative in the virtual world. So we're excited to kind of be one of the early platforms to go do that. And we're doing it embedded in a game world. I'm learning a ton. I'm having a lot of fun. And our go-to-market is really developing countries. How do we help developers in
The Philippines is your
right? The Philippines,
right?
India, countries around the world, to become developers and contribute. Because the big thing in Web3 and the metaverse is, how do you have shared ownership? How do you have developers? It's a creator economy. How do we make them the hero in the game, but also feel like they're owning? So the reason we call it Metacrafters is helping craft meta. So it's a sort of a clever way to really bring the community together to not only learn, but build together and own together.
And how does that work from a business model perspective, that you're able to pay these developers to learn?
Right. So the way that it works is that the first course is free to just try it out. And then they earn $125 as an example.
Right.
And that $125 can then go towards purchasing advanced courses. So that we do charge tuition for advanced courses. However, upon completion of that course, you get 90% of your tuition back. It's roughly about $500, and then 90% of that back. And then you gain $250 on top of that in the advanced course. So that 125 and 250, you're wondering, well, who's funding that? Initially, we'll be announcing grants soon from our L1 protocol chains that we are building curriculum for, just to kind of get the liquidity going in the marketplace. But eventually, our own business model, which my background is job boards and employer platform, that what we want to do is market to employers as these skills are developed overall. But for now, we're developing the ecosystem for the protocols and the blockchains, because they have a shortage. There are, at the end of 2021, Allie, there were 80,000 Web3 projects that were estimated, but there were only 200,000 recorded Web3 developers, and I think 80,000 active developers. So, but yet there are 32 million globally of Web2 developers, Web1 and Web2. So how do you attract these developers to learn so that they're not falling behind? Because we are moving to Web3. And this digital transformation is going to happen very, very rapidly. So Proof of Learn is developing Metacrafters to make sure that we're keeping everybody, especially in developing countries, up to speed with where we're going technically.
And I also read that Proof of Learn, actually, the proof is the authentication on the blockchain.
That's right.
Good of their credentials.
Yeah. So there's many projects that happen and kind of say they're NFTs or they're in Web3 or blockchain, but we designed this specifically, in studying blockchain, as you pointed out, how do we use the power of this technology? So the credentialing, because it's transparency. So imagine a paper diploma, and instead of a paper diploma, it's recorded in the software, your credential that you passed this assessment, and you can always carry it with you, no matter where. Even has biometric technology attached to it. So even if you sell your crypto wallet, it's your Proof of Learn NFT that stays with you. The other thing we use blockchain for is tokenization. So we create incentives. We have 2 tokens coming out called Creds. That's really an earn model. It's backed by USDC, and then Craft, which is a governance token that we're designing, and that will launch later this year.
And as far as the people that you want to attract to Proof of Learn, can you also be a non-developer, but who has interest in computer science, and you maybe haven't started off on your development trajectory, but you want to go right to Web3?
Currently, right now, we do require that you have base knowledge of Web2, that you have coding background and experience, so that we can fast track you into Web3. We do intend what we call 0 to Web2, to train eventually basic computer science. We've got some great partners who have already come to us and said, well, can you develop it for us quickly? We want to really focus, as any entrepreneur would like to, focus and make sure we're delivering well on this first project that we have, and then move downstream and be able to also teach people basic coding skills. Absolutely in our vision.
Amazing. And we're going to wrap soon, but you've
Yes.
so many things that you have learned and you've already shared such incredible advice. But I always like to wrap with, some of the most salient advice that you've received along your career, and how, other founders, particularly female founders, can apply that to their business and their career as they grow.
The phrase I use, and I shared this at my alma mater, Mount Holyoke, when they gave me an award that year, is authentic boldness. And the reason those two phrases, they seem opposing forces, right? Because authenticity means vulnerability. And how could you be bold and confident? And I just shared with you the stories. The journey towards authenticity is so powerful that it makes you bolder and stronger. The more honest you are with yourself around what you're really at, who you are, what you like, what you don't like. And that means an investment in meditation, investment in those voices that aren't very productive, so that you can bring out who you are and shine. The more that you shine, you can be bold, so you can take risk. This is so, to me, critical, this journey, because the more that you can invest in that authentic boldness, the more that you have the energy and the room in your head to make room for other people and care more for other people. If you can kind of take care of yourself first.
I love that. Well, thank you. My mission is now to be authentically bold. And Sheila, it's such a pleasure. I mean, you've accomplished, again, so much in your career, and yet you are so humble and so earnest and so authentic yourself that it's clear that you are out there, walking the talk. So really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Allie, for the time. Honored to be here. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.